most people think when they need funding for a project, for a business acquisition or real estate of any type, they go to the local bank. That's what we're kind of taught to do with, residential. But my experience says otherwise. And a lot of the folks that I know understand and have learned, some of them the hard way, particularly through 2008, that the banks really aren't your friend and not necessarily the best place to go to secure that kind of a funding, for a litany of reasons. And so what we provide is alternative sources. We're like essentially a funding concierge that partners up with the business owner, investor, professional, gets to know what they're trying to accomplish sort of on the short and long-term situation, and then just makes recommendations, because we know the market, we know where the money is, and try to help them make the right choice. Hey gang, on this week's episode, I decided to feature a show where I was interviewed by top real estate agent, billion-dollar producer Dan Lesniak out of the Northern Virginia area, where we talked about some really cool things which applies to owner-occupied commercial real estate. We talk about acquiring the property where your business is operating, talk about how you can get into that space for a low down payment, some of the tax advantages of buying that commercial property. And I get to talk a little bit with Dan about why getting a mentor is the best way to avoid minefields and be successful in business. So if you've ever considered owning commercial real estate, particularly the building or the space where your business operates from, this is a must-see, must-listen to episode for you.
What's up, Hyperfast Nation? On this episode of the show, I sat down with someone that helps entrepreneurs, business owners, real estate investors build more wealth through access to capital to own the buildings that they're already using. Welcome to the show, Paul Neal. All right, welcome to the show today, Paul. How are you doing?
Hey, Dan, I'm doing great. I'm excited about being here, man.
Yeah, I'm pumped to have you on the show and to get in front of our listeners, in particular, real estate investors or business owners or people that want to learn how to get access to more capital to build their long-term wealth. So why don't you give the listeners a little bit of your bio and background and some of the things you do to help people build wealth?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. So the real short 30,000 foot story here is I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've owned 6 businesses over the course of my career. I've had some great successes and had some interesting failures in the Great Recession of '08. Just recently sold a business a few years ago for a really nice, healthy 7-figure sum. So I've seen it all sort of from the entrepreneur, business owner, perspective. And just love working with that tribe. And so I've always been fascinated in finance. I've worked in finance in and out since 1998. I did my first real estate transaction then. And, we've come to learn over the years that most people think when they need funding for a project, for a business acquisition or real estate of any type, they go to the local bank. That's what we're kind of taught to do with, residential. But my experience says otherwise. And a lot of the folks that I know understand and have learned, some of them the hard way, particularly through 2008, that the banks really aren't your friend and not necessarily the best place to go to secure that kind of a funding, for a litany of reasons. And so what we provide is alternative sources. We're like essentially a funding concierge that partners up with the business owner, investor, professional, gets to know what they're trying to accomplish sort of on the short and long-term situation, and then just makes recommendations, because we know the market, we know where the money is, and try to help them make the right choice, in a funding kind of situation, if that's what ultimately is called for.
Where do you think most real estate investors or entrepreneurs, where do they struggle the most with this, and where are they giving up the biggest opportunities perhaps to build wealth?
Well, I think they struggle in a sense that particularly the entrepreneurs that are trying to run a business. They're trying to grow a business, and so that can be a very demanding mistress. And so when it comes to looking for opportunities for capital, whatnot, that they typically we see they talk to one or two people, one or two banks, and they get the typical kind of blow offs or whatnot, or worse, they get in a situation where the bank will do the loan and they enter into some terms that may not be the best for them, covenants, things like that sort of tie them to the bank, and future business performance, which is is great when everything is going completely fine, but when things aren't, it can be not so good. So one of the areas that we see that people trip over all the time and just don't even think they can go there is on the owner occupied commercial space. We hear a lot about investment real estate and build your portfolio, and of single family homes and apartments, that sort of thing, and that's all very good and well. But in addition to that, if a professional who has to have a local presence, so like for instance, you're a local contractor, you've got employees, maybe you have a small trucking company, or you're a veterinarian or something like that, and so you're renting your building, you're leasing it out, and you're paying thousands of dollars out the window. You're foregoing a lot of the benefits of owning that space, which are many. They're legion: the tax advantages, the leverage, the ability to maybe lease part of the building out to help defer the cost so somebody else can pay your freight. And not only that, your business is worth more when you go to sell. Real estate changes the transaction. It adds more value to the whole business piece versus just a customer base and blue sky. And quick story: a friend of mine, a client, she's a doctor, and she bought her building about 12, 13 years ago. Anyway, recently approaching retirement, and like in the medical field, a lot of these small practices are being purchased by these larger medical groups. So she agreed to sell. They bought her practice. She got a nice payout. She's still working there for a few years. But the awesome thing about it is her building is now paid off, and they're now renting the building from her, into the future. So she's got this great, passive stream of income, plus the payout on the business that will last her through retirement. So just a lot of opportunities there that I think people stumble over, and because they don't think they can do it, generally speaking, buying their own building.
So you're talking about like the typical business owner, right? They sign up for a 5 or 10-year lease, and you're basically teaching them, instead of going and paying that landlord, go out, buy your own building, operate it. Your business is the same, except now you're paying yourself, basically, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And if you're smart, you buy a building a little larger than you need, right? So you take like another client, he's got a warehouse. This particular guy's got a roofing business. He bought a warehouse that's about 12,000 square feet. He only needs about 6,000 square feet. And so he's got the other 6,000 leased out, and they're paying the freight.
Hold that thought for a second. Did you know I've been involved in developing and building hundreds of homes? And did you know that we take partner investors in our deals? If you want to learn about new opportunities that we have for real estate investors, go to my Instagram account. It's the Dan Lesniak, and send me a direct message. Again, if you want to learn about my next opportunities for real estate investor partners, go to my Instagram at the Dan Lesniak and send me a direct message.
What does it typically look like for the typical business owner who makes this move? Is the cost the same, more or less? Do they have to come up with a huge down payment? Like, walk us through some of the financial modeling on this.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things about that. Most people think, again, because they work with the local bank, that it's going to be a very large down payment. Typically, if you go to a bank, they're going to want 20 to 25% down. And so, if you buy a building that's, we'll just say $1 million building or a $2 million building, that's a pretty good chunk of change, $200,000 to $400,000 worth of cash that you basically have to take off the table as your operating capital, or out of other investments to put into the business. And that, in many cases, that's the impediment. From a payment standpoint, generally speaking, payments are at par or less than a rent situation. And the good news is it doesn't, it doesn't increase like rent. Typically, most rent contracts have leases have, escalation clauses built in. So the down payment, we've sourced deals, as low as zero down payment. So
Wow.
in most cases we're in the 5 to 15%, but based on this, the structure of the business and what that looks like. Yeah, and that's what we hear a lot. It's like, wow, we can do this. We even have situations where we've got a client right now who's closing next week on a building. He owns a restaurant. His financials are not that strong, just due to a lot of things. COVID was an issue, just some other things. But at the end of the day, we have some investors that will fund the purchase of the building without even reviewing his financials. Now, for him, it does require more down payment, that situation, but that's still not an impediment. And his issue was more defensive, Dan, because
Really?
he's been in this building for 5 or 6 years. He's developed, actually 8 or 9 years. He's developed a clientele. It's a local building. He fitted out the kitchen the way he wanted it to be fitted out. And then out of the blue, the owner shows up one day and says, "Hey, I'm going to sell the building. I'm going to give you first right of refusal, but if you don't buy the building, then I'm going to go put it on the block. And, there's no telling whether or not you're going to be, a tenant anymore once the new owners take over." So for him, if he's forced out of the situation, because as a lessee, you have no control over that.
Right.
Then he's got to find another building. And he's a local business, right? So if he moves, 3 miles down the road, if he can find an adequate space, then he might lose a percentage of his clientele. So that's an income hit. The cost of moving is an income hit. The cost of building the kitchen out the way he wants is an income hit. And then let's suppose he does that. Well, what's to say, 2, 3, 4, 5 years downstream, that building owner doesn't do the same thing.
Right. Yeah. No, this definitely gives you more control. You've kind of walked through how a lot of times the numbers are the same or better, or if you get bigger, other people are paying it for you. And then maybe you might not even have to do the down payment. And then the other thing we haven't hit on potentially is a lot of people probably get a big tax benefit from this, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, up front, I'm not a CPA, consult your CPA, but
Right.
There are a lot of benefits from depreciating the building to help offset income. Paying yourself. So basically you generally speaking, you spin up a separate company to own the real estate, and your business will lease the space from the company that you own for tax reasons and liability reasons and things like that. But yeah, there are a lot of benefits there, both in the short and the long term. And and again, you could realize all these tax benefits over time, particularly through the depreciation, offset the income. And if you eventually lease your building out to someone else, if your business is bought, you don't have to recapture that unless you sell the building. And if you sell the building, you could do a 1031 exchange into some other real estate at some point. And so there are ways to defer that taxation for quite a while that you just don't have if you're leasing the building.
Yeah. And then I guess, we haven't mentioned as much. You can, as the value of the building goes up over time, if you need capital to expand your business or just to have it invest in, diversify into something else, that building in a lot of cases probably becomes a source of equity, right? For people to, pull money out, refinance and use for something else. And it's not, you're not being taxed on it, like you kind of mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You could leverage that equity that's growing over time, for whatever reason. You can pull it out, or again, it strengthens your balance sheet if you need to secure some other kind of financing downstream for your business or secure other opportunities. Your net worth is growing because you own the real estate. It's just a tangible piece of real property that grows.
What is the who is the typical person you are serving and helping to make these kinds of moves? Like what kind of business owner or real estate investor, areas, size, all that good stuff?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, we work nationally on these types of programs. Generally, we're in the most businesses we work with sort of are $1 million plus businesses. They're established and that they've got a track record. And the real estate that we work in, we've got a dentist right now building a building in Texas, a $2.8 million business there. So professionals. Again, any of the local business owners. I have a couple of HVAC companies right now buying larger spaces, warehouse spaces, trucking companies, acquiring warehouse. There's a lot of warehouse space going on right now because of all the demand there. And what's interesting is that most of these entrepreneurs and business owners also they're diversifying into residential investments. So they're buying residential single family homes, apartment buildings, that sort of thing. So we fund those two up to about 100 units. Generally, we get larger than about 25. There's a group involved or whatnot, but we serve all over the country. We're a Zoom call away, like our conversation here, and it's just a lot of fun.
Hold that thought for a second. Are you a new real estate agent looking to jumpstart your career? Or perhaps you are an experienced agent looking to build and scale and get to the next level? If you are, I've got great news for you. After building and scaling multiple real estate businesses, I am now taking my real estate team to all 50 states. In fact, it's going to be international. I'm going to offer cutting edge technology, training in lead generation, team building, investing, and additional opportunities to build revenue streams. If you are interested and want to learn more about this opportunity, send me a text message directly to my cell phone, 703-638-4393. Again, text me at 703-638-4393.
Yeah, I think the concept is interesting and something that small business owners, if you maybe real estate brokers, if you own have a small real estate team, you should consider this, right? You can kind of get more control over your space, potentially get it cheaper. You might not even have to put money down, and you've got the value of real estate potentially for tax savings and appreciation in the future, access to the equity. So tons of reasons to do this. If people are interested in learning more about it, or figuring out if they should connect with you about this, what should they do? What are kind of next steps or resources that they can look at?
Yeah, Dan, I'm glad you asked. So a couple of things. The first thing is we put together a webpage just for your listeners, and I've got a resource out there that they can grab. Doesn't cost them anything. It's the critical questions to ask and answer before you seek funding. So it kind of helps you sort of think through the process yourself and kind of it's the process that we're going to start off with you. So we want to understand, what you're trying to accomplish. We don't just dive in and throw a solution out there without really understanding what your short and long-term goals are. And so that's a great resource, and it's at our webpage, and that address is VPC Victor Paul Charlie .capital. There's no .com. It's vpc.capital/podcast-hyperfast. So there we'll put that resource up, and if there's an immediate question or need, really the best thing is to go to our website, go to that page, just click the button and schedule a 20-minute call with me. We'll have a conversation. We'll kind of dig a little deeper to find out if something like this makes sense for you now, or maybe potentially sometime in the future.
Amazing. Thank you, Paul. Before I sign off, I always like to do a hyper fast round at the end, if you're ready for a couple rapid fire questions and answers here.
Okay, let me get on my buzzer here.
All right. What's your biggest piece of advice to a new real estate investor?
New real estate investor, get a mentor. Find someone who's done it before you that you can listen to, who will help you avoid the minefields, because there are a lot of them out there.
What's something that most investors do not do that you wish they all did?
Take the emotion out of the analysis.
All right. What's the biggest challenge you've had in business and how did you overcome it?
The Great Recession of 2008. Had a business. It was a multi-million-dollar business positioning to sell, and the lights went out with the economy. Liquidity dried up, and the business crashed and burned. And so, very painful. Took me a couple of years to get my sea legs and kind of pull myself back up and say, "Yep, I'm getting back in the arena again to start fighting again," because I'm like the scorpion, the scorpion just is going to sting, at the end of the day. That's what I do. And so I couldn't go back and get a job. I had to go back into business. So.
All right. When you're not working on your business, what are you most likely doing?
Something outside. I'm running, biking. And if it's winter, I'm skiing. And if it's summer, I'm somewhere, hopefully in the islands, diving.
All right, last one. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I currently live at the beach. I see myself with a mountain home. We've already picked out the location and we're putting on the plans. I have a couple of businesses and I see the systems and people in place that are pretty much operating without me and allowing me to travel and do the things that I want to do.
All right. Where's the mountain home location, by the way?
It's in Virginia, in Blacksburg. Okay. My wife and I went to school up there. My daughter's there now. We just love that part of the world.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Before I sign off, best ways again for people to reach out and connect and learn more about what you do.
Yeah, come to our website and then you can get the free resource or click the button and schedule an appointment. One more time, that's VPC Victor Paul Charlie .capital/podcast-hyperfast.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Paul. To all of our listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in. Please share this episode with other people that would benefit from the lessons you heard or watched today, and I'll see you next time. Real estate agents, I have built out a group in all 50 states, in many different countries as well, and I'm looking for people that want to partner with me and get the benefit of not one, but two nationally recognized coaching programs to help grow your business. If you are ready to join me at EXP or want to learn more information about it, I would be honored if you would send me a text message at 703-638-4393. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure and go to hyperfastagent.com to learn about upcoming in-person and online events. And don't forget to share this show with someone that you think could benefit from hearing it, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube or anywhere that you can find podcasts.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you found this content helpful or entertaining, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you never miss out on future videos. And visit my website for much more great content to grow your wealth and change the world through business ownership at paulneal.net. That's PAULNEAL.net. And until next time, make it happen and stay awesome.